In October 1962, the entire world came closer to destruction than ever before in human history. Not during World War II, not during any modern conflict, but during 13 terrifying days, when two superpowers stood ready to launch nuclear war. One mistake, one misunderstanding, one single button, and millions of people could have vanished in hours. Children were sent home from schools. Families prepared underground shelters. American bombers flew across the skies carrying nuclear weapons. Soviet submarines disappeared beneath the ocean. And somewhere in the middle of it all, a tiny island called Cuba became the center of the most dangerous crisis humanity had ever seen. This is the story of the Cuban Missile Crisis, the moment the world almost ended. After World War II, the planet split into two powerful sides. On one side, the United States. On the other, the Soviet Union. Two superpowers locked in a Cold War. Not a war of direct battles, but a war of fear, spies, nuclear weapons, and global influence. Both nations believed the other could destroy them at any moment. And by the early 1960s, nuclear weapons had become powerful enough to erase entire cities in seconds. But then something happened that changed everything. In 1959, a revolutionary leader named Fidel Castro took control of Cuba, only 90 miles away from the coast of America. For the United States, this was terrifying, because Castro quickly formed a close alliance with the Soviet Union. America suddenly feared that communism was spreading right next to its borders. Tension exploded. Then, in 1961, the United States secretly supported an invasion called the Bay of Pigs. The mission completely failed. And for Castro, this confirmed one thing: America might invade Cuba again at any moment. So Cuba turned even closer toward Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev. And Khrushchev saw a dangerous opportunity. At the time, the United States already had nuclear missiles positioned near the Soviet Union in places like Turkey. So Khrushchev thought, if America can place missiles near us, why can't we place missiles near America? Secretly, the Soviet Union began transporting nuclear missiles into Cuba. Huge missiles, weapons capable of striking major American cities within minutes, and nobody in America knew. At least, not yet. October 14, 1962. An American U-2 spy plane flew high above Cuba. Its cameras captured something shocking: long missile launch sites hidden among the Cuban countryside. The photographs were delivered directly to President John F. Kennedy. The reaction inside the White House was immediate: panic, fear, disbelief. Because this changed everything. If those missiles became operational, millions of Americans could die before the United States even had time to react. And suddenly, Kennedy faced the most important decision of his life. Should America attack Cuba immediately? Should they invade? Should they bomb the missile sites? Or would that trigger nuclear war? Inside the White House, arguments exploded. Some military generals demanded instant airstrikes. Others warned that attacking Cuba could force the Soviet Union to retaliate, and retaliation could mean the end of civilization itself. Now, imagine this for a second. You wake up one morning and discover that nuclear missiles are pointed directly at your country. What would you do? Would you attack first, or would you try to negotiate? Comment your answer below. For several terrifying days, Kennedy kept the discovery secret from the public. Meanwhile, Soviet ships carrying military equipment continued moving toward Cuba. The clock was ticking. Finally, on October 22nd, Kennedy addressed the entire nation on live television. His speech shocked the world. He revealed that the Soviet Union had secretly placed nuclear missiles in Cuba. Then he announced a naval blockade around the island. No Soviet ship would be allowed through if Soviet vessels crossed the blockade. American forces were prepared to stop them, possibly by force. Across the planet, fear spread instantly. People rushed into stores to buy food and supplies. Schools practiced emergency drills. Families built nuclear shelters underground. Children learned how to hide beneath desks, as if desks could somehow protect them from atomic fire. And then came the moment everyone feared most. Soviet ships moved closer toward the American blockade line. American warships waited. Weapons were ready. One wrong move could ignite World War III. The world watched in silence. Then, suddenly, the Soviet ships stopped. Some turned around. For a brief moment, disaster seemed avoidable. But behind the scenes, the crisis was actually getting worse. In Cuba, Soviet nuclear missile sites were becoming operational. American military leaders pushed Kennedy harder than ever. "Attack now," they said, "before it's too late." Meanwhile, American nuclear forces entered DEFCON 2, one step away from full nuclear war. This had never happened before in history. Bombers carrying nuclear weapons remained in the air 24 hours a day. Missiles stood ready for launch. And beneath the oceans, Soviet submarines waited silently. Then the world came horrifyingly close to accidental destruction. One Soviet submarine near Cuba had lost communication with Moscow. American ships began dropping warning depth charges around it. Inside the submarine, conditions were unbearable. Extreme heat, no fresh air, no communication. The Soviet crew believed war might have already started, and the submarine carried a nuclear torpedo. The captain wanted to launch it. One nuclear explosion against an American ship could have triggered full-scale nuclear war. But one man stopped it. A Soviet officer named Vasily Arkhipov refused to approve the launch. That single decision may have saved humanity. Think about that. The fate of the world rested in the hands of one person inside a submarine deep beneath the ocean. As the crisis continued, secret messages traveled between Kennedy and Khrushchev. Both leaders understood the terrifying truth. If either side pushed too far, there might be no world left afterward. Finally, Khrushchev sent an offer. The Soviet Union would remove the missiles from Cuba if America promised never to invade Cuba again. Privately, another deal was also made. America would secretly remove its own nuclear missiles from Turkey later on. And then, after 13 days of fear, the crisis ended. The Soviet missiles were dismantled, nuclear war was avoided, and the world finally breathed again. But the Cuban Missile Crisis changed humanity forever. For the first time, world leaders truly understood how close nuclear weapons could bring civilization to extinction. After the crisis, new communication systems were created between Washington and Moscow, direct hotlines, faster diplomacy, because both sides realized that misunderstandings alone could destroy the planet. Even today, historians still debate one terrifying question: how close were we really to nuclear war? Some experts believe humanity was only minutes away. Others believe luck played the biggest role. But one thing is certain: if just a few decisions had gone differently, you might not be watching this video right now. And honestly, that's the scariest part of this story. Not the missiles, not the submarines, not even the nuclear bombs, but the fact that human civilization almost disappeared because of fear, pressure, and miscommunication. The Cuban Missile Crisis remains one of history's greatest warnings, a reminder that power without control can destroy the world, and that sometimes history is shaped by a single decision, a single moment, a single human being. If you enjoyed this documentary and want more cinematic stories about the darkest moments in human history, subscribe to the channel and become part of the Histosite journey. Because history isn't just about the past. Sometimes it's a warning about the future. And before you leave, here's one final question. Do you think humanity would survive another crisis like this today? Or would modern technology make things even worse? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next story.